welcome to Movie Magic. I am your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC, and I have no idea precisely when this video is coming out, but at the time of recording, I literally just got back from seeing Disclosure Day, right over there on the other side of the screen, opening weekend, actually. This is a movie that I've been looking forward to for a couple of reasons, the main reason being that it is directed by Steven Spielberg, and, I haven't watched, an absurd amount of Spielberg movies. In fact, I've only watched, a handful of them up to this point, but every time that I do watch a Spielberg movie, I come out of it knowing that I need to watch more of his material. I just really love what he is doing, generally speaking, and the partnership between him and John Williams, quite frankly, for basically every one of his films is something that I find really, really great, and something like a hallmark of his films and his style that just really sticks out to me. But, I went and saw this movie, and I wish I had been able to, go in, basically blind. Unfortunately, seeing a handful of other movies over the last handful of weeks means that I've seen trailers for this movie implicitly because of that. This is one that I think should probably be seen without seeing trailers if possible. Not necessarily because the trailers spoil anything specifically, but because I feel like they give a slightly wrong impression of what this movie is. Now, a big part of what Disclosure Day is actually a slow burn, and by a slow burn, it's also a long one as well. This movie is nearly 2.5 hours long, and when I discovered that fact before going into it, I was like, does a movie about this topic really need to be 2.5 hours long? How is Spielberg going to justify that runtime? And the answer is by making it a slow burn, and a slow burn between more than one major plot line for the first half of the movie is basically two different storylines going on concurrently. They're connected to each other, they're interwoven in certain ways at specific points in time, but overall, a lot of what the movie is doing is converging these two storylines, and then obviously going for the title of the Disclosure Day. And if you want no spoilers at all about this movie, I don't know why you'd be watching this video, especially since it's probably coming out a month after release. So this isn't going to be a fully 100% spoiler-free video, but it's going to be major spoiler-free. But the general conceit of it, I'm pretty sure we can all, reasonably assume, especially if you've seen trailers, it has to do with extraterrestrials. This is nothing new for Spielberg as well. He kind of has a fascination with exploring this topic throughout his career. A handful of his movies deal with extraterrestrials in one way or another. And of the few of them that I have seen, I've only seen a few. I saw E.T. 1.5 million years ago, but I don't remember much about it. And then I've seen Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, of course, and I have the unpopular opinion of really liking Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I feel like Disclosure Day is trying to do something relatively similar, but without the adventure veneer of Indiana Jones, and trying to do it in a more grounded, modern day, maybe near-ish future, but probably not quite near-ish future just based off of the dates that are given in the movie. So more or less a modern day world, and I kind of suggested, that is relatively grounded. And that worked. There was a lot of drama within the unveiling of the storylines and the way that those converged together. And a lot of the reveals here were actually really subtly done, all things considered. I think that the reveals and the climax, a lot of everything that happened is really tasteful. It also, the movie ends on a really tasteful note as well. You see plenty explicitly, right? You get to the Disclosure Day, but it's a relatively open ending. You don't get to see the consequences of what actually happens throughout the movie, and I think that that's for the better. It's not like Kingdom of the Crystal Skull as an example, where the climax gets a little bit away from itself. I respect what the vision was there, and I don't hate it, but it is a little bit much. Disclosure Day decides to do that kind of a relatively similar thing, to an extent, but again, to a much more tasteful degree. Overall, I just found a lot of this movie to be compelling because of the way that it's written, the way that it is structured, the way that it is paced, and the way that it is edited. It is a slow burn, so it takes a while to do most of what it's doing, but I never felt like it was slow per se. You use the term slow burn to mean something that takes a long time to actually ramp up to the finale, but once it does, it's a lot, right? And don't get me wrong, there are a couple of sequences sprinkled throughout the movie that keep it from being like, I don't know, probably something more akin to Oppenheimer, right? Which I haven't seen Oppenheimer, much to my own chagrin, but I understand that that's a sort of slow burn in a sense of like it's basically just characters talking for 3 hours. A Disclosure Day isn't that slow, but it is a lot slower than you would expect for, say, an action movie, especially an action movie from Spielberg to take, even though it has plenty of stylistic hallmarks here and there of that kind of genre. Used, and again, probably like the word that I'm going to use the most throughout this review and that I've already used several times is tasteful. There's a lot of intentionality behind the crafting of certain things. Now, if I was going to, go into like certain criticisms that I have of Disclosure Day just immediately upon watching it, I think that maybe a handful of lines of dialogue are a little on the nose, maybe not necessarily exposition heavy per se, but aren't like the most crafty with the way that they give you a couple of lines of exposition a couple times. Like, you have moments where a character will straight up say something. There's just like no person in real life is going to give that detail in that way. But you kind of have to just go with it and overlook it because, well, it's a 2.5 hour movie. And if you were to go into literally everything like that as subtly as you might prefer, you'd end up with something a lot longer and it wouldn't justify that. So I forgive it. It's shortcoming there. But other than that, the writing is actually really solid. I think that the characters are very well cast. The main cast of this film is honestly incredible. I'm really into the way that Emily Blunt performed her part. I don't even know who the other main characters are, honestly. Colin Firth did a stupendous job. He was really good. What have I even seen him in? Like, I recognize him, but I don't know what other movies I've seen him in. Probably Mamma Mia 1.5 million years ago, but I wouldn't remember him specifically from that movie. But, Colin Firth was incredible as basically the main antagonist. Josh O'Connor did very good in his role as well. I was big into that. I don't think I've seen anything else with him in there. I don't even know if I recognized him prior to this movie. Let's see. Coleman Domingo was also really good. I'm sure I've seen him in something before because I recognize his voice. He's been in several things that I know I want to watch, so that's cool. Who is the other gal? Eve Hewson as Jane. Very good performance there as well. Like, just all around, all of the main characters of this movie, really well cast, really well performed, really well acted, really well written, and I mean, the movie itself is just really well written. Like, the script is really tight. And I think the script writer is also somebody, David Cope. What other films has he written? He's written on Jurassic Park. At least a couple, one of the Indiana Jones movies anyway, a couple of them. He wrote on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, so that's cool. War of the Worlds, there's another Spielberg film there. So, another creator who's really, practiced, I guess you could say. I was really into a ton of what this movie was doing. A lot of creative shots that were used in some fun ways. A couple of them were a little bit much and distracting, and some of them maybe didn't get the full effect that I think they were trying to, in my opinion. But a lot of the film was also really well shot. The action sequences throughout, in particular, were really tense, really well done. But overall, it's just the writing, the performances, and the overall pace of the movie, how it goes along, what it's doing, and flips back and forth between the primary narratives through the first half of the movie, basically, until you have convergence of the primary characters and how those two are tied together, the reveals related to all of that. Just everything about Disclosure Day I actually really, really liked. I'm not 100% sure what I would end up rating this movie, but I thought it was really good. As far as some of the other technical stuff is concerned, I've already, kind of mentioned a little bit of the direction, just a couple very minor critiques with some of the cinematography, just a couple of shots that weren't super great, but also a lot of shots that were really, really good. A lot of the special effects are really great, including the CGI, actually. Seeing the trailer in theaters, basically, for other films that I've seen recently, basically the last few films that I've covered on this channel. I was actually a little bit worried going into this because the CGI didn't look fantastic in the way that no CGI animals in the 2020s of film look fantastic. They're so overproduced, essentially, that looks incredibly fake and unbelievable. I was surprised that it didn't look as terrible in this movie as I was kind of led to believe it probably would from the trailers. I was kind of worried about that aspect. Didn't have anything to worry about there. There's a lot of practical set design on this film as well that is also really appreciated. CGI was not used basically anywhere where it didn't need to be. It was only really animals, like non-human entities, where CGI was used in an obvious manner that I could tell that it was used. So very well done on the visual effects, all things considered. Yeah, just really, really well put together film. I found myself really, really hooked by this. You know, like a slow burn is kind of a risk in a lot of ways because not everybody's going to click with one. And if you do click with it, it's because you're more or less inherently compelled by what it is that it is actually doing, what it is trying to do more so. And I definitely felt that way throughout this entire movie. I was excited to see it because it was Spielberg. I went into it somewhat wary because of a couple of the trailers. I was thinking it was going to be something a little bit more action forward. I also worried that like some of the CGI animal related stuff was going to be a bigger part of the on-screen appearance of the film, if that makes sense. Like I thought that they were going to be a little bit more forward within the plot, but fortunately no, it's only like a couple of scenes basically where those moments are utilized. And so that isn't too distracting. There are a couple points where, you know, maybe some of the thematic ideas of the film aren't like the most deftly handled. The idea of like, you know, aliens, extraterrestrials, like revealing what that is versus the idea of God in society. Some of that wasn't like as fleshed out as it could have been, but I also think that that's probably for the better because the way, the degree to which some of those topics were fleshed out, was like inching towards being like, I don't know, how well this is gonna do. You know, I think that it very much bordered on being preachy if it were to go more into some of that stuff. But fortunately, you knew when to like kind of hold off and not go any further with the idea. I think I saw somewhere, I don't know how true this is, that Spielberg was saying somewhere about how this movie would like make people doubt their faith in God or something like that. I think that's probably like edgy marketing or something like that. I don't think that's really true at all. But you know, some of the ideas regarding some of that was interesting to the degree that it was utilized here, and thankfully it wasn't utilized too much so as to, again, be like sort of preachy in some weird way. So, you know, I just generally don't have a whole lot to complain about with this movie, like from a large degree or extent, right? Like I just appreciated what this was doing overall and found it really effective, and I really, really enjoyed myself. You know, I thought I would enjoy it because it's Spielberg, and the topic seemed like something that he was wanting to not retread per se, but like re-explore from a different vantages, and that was something that I was interested in seeing, even as somebody who hasn't seen a whole ton of Spielberg's filmography. But kind of like what I said near the beginning of this video, every time I come out of a Spielberg movie, I come out of it like knowing that I need to watch more, and that's how I feel right now, and I kind of want to do that right now. I just really like his style, what he's doing. I mentioned John Williams earlier as well, and, you know, I was a little bit concerned is not the right word, but I was like, I found it intriguing the way that I got through probably like the first third of Disclosure Day or so, and kind of realized like I didn't really notice like much of the score, much of the music, the soundtrack throughout the movie up to that point. I was like, that seems to be like so subtle, I haven't really noticed it, you know, especially not compared to Obsession or Backrooms, which both of which I saw recently, and both of which I've covered on the channel recently. I think I'll probably have the video for Obsession come out next week, actually, and the video for Backrooms came out a couple of weeks ago. Even Iron Lung as well, all three of those movies I've watched and made reviews for recently, and I don't think I mentioned the music in any one of those reviews. I'll probably include them somewhere in the edits as like a text on screen saying, oh yeah, the music is also incredible, I forgot to mention it. Disclosure Day, I was like a little bit worried that like I wouldn't have anything to say about the music because, again, I didn't really notice any of it through the first, honestly, probably close to half of the movie. I guess that's just how well it was put together, you know, how well it fit the movie. But I think it's also like a mixing thing. The music was a lot quieter than I think maybe it should, maybe compared to other stuff that I've heard from John Williams, you know, compared to Indiana Jones or Star Wars or something like that. And speaking of Star Wars, there's a particular chase sequence, a scene involving a train. You know the one if you watch the movie, even if you watch the trailer, you know the scene. But there's a lot of particular sound stings in there that Williams uses that definitely call back to like certain moments in the Star Wars prequel trilogy, for example. I want to say certain motifs from the battle music of like Naboo specifically. There's a couple of stings that like you'll recognize in there through a couple moments of the movie. The back half of the movie, the music comes forward way more, and you hear so many different hallmarks of Williams' style over the decades, and you get a few different moments. It feels like a conglomeration of stuff, which is really great actually, considering how old Williams is. And you know, you hate to say it, but like you worry that we're not going to have that much more time with him probably. How old even is he? One second. Where is composer John Williams? How old is he? He was born in 32, so he's what, like 95 years old at this point, 95 and a half. He is not young, but his music is incredible, and you can hear a little bit of like the evolution of his sound, I guess, like through the back half of this movie in particular. I won't say the whole movie because again, I don't really remember hearing the music in the first half, but when I did notice the music, it was really good and fed into that Spielberg style. You know, I don't remember like the exact number, but I'm pretty sure Williams has worked with Spielberg on the vast majority of Spielberg's films, and Spielberg somehow managed to convince him to come back for Disclosure Day. I'm really glad he did. You know, that's definitely something, those two together have something magical and really gives this movie a Spielberg flair to it. You know, it is a modern film, but a lot of what it's doing is constructed both from the direction and from the sound, from the blocking of shots and the music supplementing it. Again, when I noticed the music mostly in the back half, it felt like a Spielberg movie a lot of the time, and that was really great for me, right? So I really enjoyed my time with Disclosure Day. I'm sure there's some other things that I could comment on outside of like the cast and performances that I already mentioned were incredible throughout the whole movie. What even else is there to say off the top of my head? I mentioned editing and cinematography, stuff like that. I mentioned the different acts of the film in some degree. You know, I mentioned some of the topical stuff. I mentioned some of the set design and all of that kind of thing. I mentioned the visual effects. Like, yeah, there is just so much about Disclosure Day that really worked for me personally. So, you know, I'm not going to say that this is going to be incredible to everybody. It's currently sitting at an average of 3.3 stars on Letterboxd, which I think is way too low, to be honest. I think that average should be at closer to like 3.7, probably 3.7 to 4, somewhere in that range. But maybe it's the fact that it's a slow burn, that it's not working for everybody because of that. Maybe it's, I don't know what it is. Outside of it being a slow burn, I'm not 100% sure like what about this would really turn people off. But, you know, the vast majority of those ratings are between 3 and 4 stars, so that's definitely acceptable. I think I'm sitting above 4 stars myself, whether that's 4.5 or 5, I don't know. If it was 5, that would make like 3 5-star films that I've seen in the last week and a half at the time of recording. So that's really cool. I just had a great time with Disclosure Day, man, and I'm excited for, honestly, just watching more Spielberg. I really need to get around to doing some more of that because, yeah, obvious reasons. I've loved all of his movies that I've seen so far, which again isn't that many. It's only the 4 Indiana Jones movies, and Jaws and this that I know off the top of my head. I've seen some of his other films like a million years ago, but I don't remember which ones off the top of my head. Jurassic Park, of course. How can I forget Jurassic Park? But like, there are so many more of his movies that I haven't seen yet that I really want to and want to get around to because, yeah, there is just every time I come out of a Spielberg movie, I come out wanting to see more. So I guess that's going to be as good a place as any to close this review. Thank you for watching this video. If you did, if you went and saw the movie, let me know what you thought about it, because I have several friends who also came out of it really, really liking it. But I know a couple of people who weren't as hot on it as well. So I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are. If you have any strong feelings, let me know those in the comments below. But I appreciate you checking out this video if you did. All that being said, for now, I've been your host, King Crusoe. You can call me KC. By the time this video is coming out, I'm probably going to be seeing Odyssey soon. That'll probably be out in theaters, I guess, within the next couple of weeks, depending on what day I release this video. And so I'll probably be reviewing that before too horribly long. That I'm excited for. I'm also excited for, what was the other movie that came out, or that was shown in the previews? I forgot. There was another movie that I'm really excited to watch that's coming out in the middle of August. So got some more cool movies to watch in 2026, I guess. Anyway, that is going to be the end of the video. Thank you for watching one final time. I hope to see you guys in the next video.